Good morning, everyone. We're going to be starting in about 6 minutes. Can everyone hear me? Let me know in the chat window if you can or can't hear me. If nobody says anything, I'm going to presume that you can't hear me. Fantastic. Thank you, Rob. We've got a few minutes to go, so if anyone wants to make a last-minute coffee run or break for the toilet, you've still got a couple of minutes left to go. Good morning, Katie. Hopefully the weather down your side is better. Obviously, you're on the webinar, so praying for a snow day didn't work for you guys either. Guys, everyone is on mute, by the way. But if you do have questions, there is a little Q&A section that you can put questions into. So if you do have anything you want to ask along the way, feel free to drop it in there. And as soon as we get a chance towards the end of the presentation, we'll take a look and we'll run through any of those. There's also the chat window. So if you want to chat with myself or anyone else in the session today, feel free to drop a message in there. Good morning, everyone. I think we'll just around make a start in a few moments. So thank you for joining us today's NETGEAR Insider webinar. So today we're going to be focusing on our M4300 range of switches, some of the diversity in application, where you can use them, some of the benefits around it. I think we still see a few more people loading in, the last minute rush. So we'll give it, I don't know, give it 15 seconds, I reckon. We'll make a start. Thank you for joining us today. It's nice and sunny here in Binfield, Bracknell. Hopefully nobody's snowed in, or maybe unfortunately you're not snowed in, depending on how you look at it. So I think we'll make a start. So let's rock and roll. A lot of work's gone into that transition. So today, like I said, we're going to be talking about the diversity and the benefits of the NETGEAR M4300 series switches. So I'm going to be your host. I'm Kieran Purdy. I'm the SE Systems Engineer for NETGEAR UK, Ireland and the Nordics. I focus on NETGEAR business products. So this is going to be the agenda. So we'll introduce you to the family of switches if you haven't seen them before. Some of the types of application. We'll look at the benefits. We're going to focus in and take a look at the latest member of the M4300 family, which is the M4300-96X. A pretty cool introduction into that switch family and something that brings a few news and firsts for NETGEAR. We'll take a little demo. We're not going to go too heavy, but just want to maybe show you the interface of the switch itself, show you what it looks like, and then we'll spare a little time for Q&A. So without further ado, let's rock and roll. So who are NETGEAR? NETGEAR are a global network company that focuses and delivers innovative products to businesses, service providers and customers with a focus on reliability and ease of use. And we are on a mission to be the innovative leaders of networking and bringing networking to the masses within the world. So before we take a look at the switches, I just want to do a bit of background. And NETGEAR sells many switches across many different product families. So I think it's important just to take a look and see where the M4300 sits amongst those. So we sell what we would describe as unmanaged switches. I'm not going to talk about those. There's no management to them. So our plug and play applications, there's not a lot that we can do with them. But when we move above that, NETGEAR sells what we call Smart Managed Plus switches. Now these come with layer 2 features, but things like VLAN support for port-based or 802.1 Q-based VLANs, a little bit of quality service, a tiny bit of DHCP and 802.1P, very basic in configuration. We have things like auto denial of service, IGMP snooping, loop protection at layer 2, a pretty good feature for basic rate limiting in terms of being able to just rate limit your ingress and egress per port. Port mirroring, which can be quite useful, I know from an engineering perspective, for a little 5 or 8 port to snoop on traffic and do some port mirroring for troubleshooting, which could be incredibly useful. And also we support port trunking or link aggregation. So it's a pretty decent feature set on a really good price-pointed entry-level switch. But when we move above that, we have what we call Smart Managed Pro. Smart Managed Pro includes everything that you saw before, but you also get advanced VLANs, things like guest VLANs, 802.1x, also get MAC-based VLANs, quality of service with layer 2, 3, 4, priority queues, static routing on certain models, which would define as VLAN routing or SVI interfaces on your VLANs. IGMP snooping again, things like dynamic VLANs, layer 2 relays. Now, when we move above that, we get to our NETGEAR fully managed switch features, switches. And this is where the M4300 family sits, at the very top of the stack in terms of what we sell. Now, these include everything, again, that you've seen before, but you're going to get advanced quality of service, VLANs, multicast, not just IGMP snooping, but we now include an IGMP querier. You've got access control lists and policy-based routing, full DHCP, not just as a client, but also as a server as well, with full DHCP layer 3 relay. Static routing at layer 3, but you've also got dynamic routing, things like OSPF. You've got IPv6 to IPv4 tunneling, industry standard CLI management. So if you are more used to a CLI infrastructure and that's where you're familiar, I'm sure you would have no problems. We'll take a look just maybe to quickly delve through the CLI and have a quick look just to see what it looks like. A decent GUI, and it's very nicely laid out. A lot of work goes into that. Pretty granular software. Spine and leaf architecture for stacking it we'll take a look at, but it's a really great way of stacking with a lot of benefits. Non-stop forwarding. Then we've got cross-stacking with other models. I don't want to talk too much about it, but that's what we're going to take a look at today. So remember, this is where the M4300 sits in the NETGEAR fully managed switch range, right at the top of the stack in terms of what we sell for switching. Now, the switches themselves look like this. So this is the full range on the right-hand side of M4300 switches. You'll notice there's a few different looking flavors there. So what it does do is it incorporates 40 gig switches, 10 gig switches, and 1 gig switches that will all stack together and form what we would call non-stop forwarding. Now, we've got a really great solution in terms of how we stack, and that's what we would call spine and leaf architecture. We'll take a look at that on a diagram, but you still do have things like ring topology stacking. So if you are used to that, or that is your flavor and how you want to work, the ability is still there. Now, in terms of what you can do or add into one stack, you can look at a maximum of 384 1 gig ports, 768 10 gig ports, or 192 40 gig ports, all in one stack of switches. That's all under single IP address management and with non-stop forwarding across the entire stack. Now, those numbers are obviously based on the same models. The hardware limit is 8 switches per stack. So any 8 switches is the hardware limit. You've got scalable solutions, things like the half-width models that you'll see at the top. So we do full copper. Those two at the top are both full copper 10 gig switches. We have half size like the 8x8, which are all active at the same time. So you've got half copper, half fiber. And we also have a 12 port version of that. So 12 copper, 12 fiber, all 10 gig, all active at the same time. Those can clamp together to form a 1U switch. And then on the large side of things, we have a modular switch, which is right at the bottom, which is our 96X. And this is an 8-port modular solution. So you populate the switch with the 8-port modules, and there are various permutations of those modules that we'll take a look at later on. So this is the family of switches we're talking about. Remember, they all stack together. So you can take something like the 10 gig version at the top. I can take the bottom switch. I can take the 1 gig POE switch just on top of that, and they will still all stack together regardless of its core port base, which is pretty cool. So in terms of 10 gig models, these are what we're looking at. So we have the 8x8, which if you look at the bottom left-hand corner, that's that switch there, the very top. We have the 12x12, which is the switch clamped to it. You've got the 24X, which looks exactly the same, but it's 24 ports of copper. Then we have the 2424, which is bottom left-hand corner just underneath it. And that is 24 ports of copper, 24 ports of fiber. And then we have the 48X, which again is another all-copper switch. Now, those are all 10 gig. And then the last one we have is the 96X. So you can buy that and you can populate that with 10 gig modules, be it in either SFP or copper. So as you can see is the SFP plus, the APM 408F. But what this switch also introduces is our first 40 gig switch, the QSFP Plus. So what this switch can be is either 96 ports of 10 gig copper, 96 ports of 10 gig fiber, or you can look at 24 ports of 40 gig QSFP Plus. So those come in a 2-port module, and you can populate that. Now, all of these switches here, bar the half size, come with redundant power. So if you're either looking for redundancy in terms of that, you can add it. If you're looking on the 96X, this switch also introduces 10 gig POE Plus. So the 10 gig ports that you buy in here for 10 gig copper, these ports here all run POE Plus on them. So you have an option with POE or without. If you buy it with POE, it's 10 gig POE Plus, but those will also negotiate any copper port on that, negotiate either 1 gig, 2.5 gig, 5 gig, or 10 gig. So they are multi-gig ports. Now, for the 1 gig models, we're going to be looking at our full width again. So these are going to be 28 port, 52 port, and then the POE versions of those. So you've got the 28G POE Plus down there on the bottom left-hand side, and then you've got the 52 port. We always include a minimum of 2 10 gig coppers and 2 10 gig fibers on these switches. So we call them 28 ports and 52s because you've got 24 and your 48 ports of core. You've got your 4 10 gig uplinks. So you've got 2 in copper, 2 in fiber. You also have a management port, serial console port, and an out-of-band management port for all of these switches. So if you are building an out-of-band management network, again, I'm going to adhere to that on here. As you can see now, the 10 gig ports, these are what we use for stacking on the switches. So we can stack over any 10 gig ports, no dedicated stacking port. We stack over 10 gig ports. So those 2 copper and 2 fiber can either be used for standard Ethernet, and they can be used if you have a 10 gig NAS server or installation, or want to build a 10 gig hop. You can use them for that, or you can turn those into a stacking port and use those for stacking switches together. Now, there's a few different applications. I'm going to start with this, and this is something that we've been talking a lot at NETGEAR about recently. I know a lot of our partners are going to be over, and a lot of our customers are going to be over at the ISE show in Amsterdam next week. NETGEAR will be there also. We'll be on the SDVoE stand, so that's the software-defined video over Ethernet stand. So do go along. We'll also be showing product on a lot of our partner stands. Some guys such as ZV will be over there, so go and take a look and talk to the guys at ZV, and they will also have some NETGEAR product powering their encoder and decoder solution. Now, if you're not aware, there is a alliance called the Software Defined Video over Ethernet Alliance. NETGEAR is a founding member, along with guys like ZV and Christie Digital and Sony, and we all adhere to set standards to ensure interoperability amongst our products. And as part of that, NETGEAR has assured that with our switches, if you are running IP video, which is SDVoE certified, we will ensure that you can use one of our switches, such as the 96X, and deliver 4K, 60 frames per second video with zero touch configuration on our products. You could plug in 48 encoders, 48 decoders, all running at 10 gig, all at the same time, and not have to configure that switch. The kind of solution is based around everything you see, things like video screens. It is heavily focused towards the delivery of 4K, 4K being something that pushes out 10 gig video streams over 10 gig copper. The application is massive. You think of things like video walls, video screens, digital advertising, cinemas, businesses, conference rooms, satellite TV, hotels. The list really does go on. So this is a really key vertical to us. We've done a lot of webinars. We'll be doing some more webinars on SDVoE AV, and we'll also be hosting in our Bracknell office an AV Open Day. where we will be demoing a new AV installation that we're pretty excited about. Do check us out online and have a look. It will be in all of our collateral online, but 13th of March, we'll be having an open day. So if that is of interest to any of you guys, any of your customers, encourage you to sign up. I will include a link post this webinar. So if anyone is interested, do sign up. So that's one. Now, the obvious application is the IT application. So this is the core of what we do. And in terms of what we're looking at, these are just a couple of the key things. Now, the idea is where you can put a switch, you can put the M4300. In terms of features, we kind of know that it has the most comprehensive features that you could think of in terms of what we show at switching at NETGEAR. And that is a big benefit to buy every feature as opposed to buying the core features. There is always a scenario where you bought for X, but you ended up needing Y. So buying something like the M4300 leaves you with the most possible features in case of any kind of scenario, any network changes, any upgrades, potentially a new network where I need to forward DHCP. The M4300 will leave you in the best possible place. Now, we've got things like H-array top of rack installations. We talk about our half-size SKUs, the 8 and 8s, the 24Xs, 12 by 12s. These are incredibly popular as top of rack switches. As you can see, they clamp together. So they come with a special clamp inside any one of the boxes if you buy one to clamp it to another one. It doesn't have to be the same. So it could be clamping an 8 by 8 to a 12 by 12 or 24X. And they will form a 1U switch. With our stacking, they will now, if you so wish, become one virtual switch, which now enables you to do things like distributed LACP, either to a switch below or to a server installation. Now, you know that you're looking at a minimum of 20 gigs worth of bandwidth going down to your server, as well as the ability to distribute that across your switches. So, you know, in a failure situation, any failure anywhere within the network, be it in a network hop or in a power or in anything that could be, you are still protected. So that's an incredibly popular solution. We have the edge ring stack. So remember, it's up to 8 switches in a stack, which is 384 1 gig ports, as well as all the 10 gig ports that you are looking at in terms of either uplink or stacking as well. So those add on to that 384 port number. This is going to enable you to simplify the edge of your network. Could be at the edge, could be at the core. Things like desktop, PCs, laptops, printers, wireless access points. Remember, that's up to 384 telephones if you're doing POE. The POE switches come with both a PA and a PB option for power supply. So you either have a low or a high power supply. You can also, instead of using your power supplies in redundant mode, you can also use those as both for POE to increase your POE budget. And you can be looking upwards of 1,400 watts per switch to deliver POE. Remember, up to 8 in a stack, 384, you can deliver masses of power to support an AP installation or a telephone installation amongst your business, even a CCTV, IP CCTV installation. And we've got spine and leaf stacking. So if you are looking at stacking, you can be looking on the right-hand side here where you've got a couple of top of rack switches. So you've got the 2424s, even maybe the 96X like you see in the top right. Those will perform your number 1 and 2, what we would call the spine of the stack at 10 gig. And then we distribute 2 connections down to every single switch, which means those are now our 1 gig leaf switches to that. And we know that should any connection be interrupted there, no other switch within that stack would be effective. Also, you can see from the top, support a whole host of different cables there, as well as all those multi-mode, fiber, 10 gig, copper, as well as gigabit. Remember, the 96X at the top right is multi-gig as well. What we said, so this is just a close-up there on the top of rack active scenario. So remember, both switches are active, not an active passive scenario. One will become the master, one will become the backup, but they are both active at the same time. We support either static lag or full-blown LACP, layer 2, layer 3, layer 4 hashing. You've got the POE deployment at the edge. So remember, up to 384 ports of POE if you are using our 1 gig, even more if you are using our 10 gig on the 96X. Spine and leaf stacking. So this is a close-up kind of on that. And if you look in the bottom right-hand corner again, it's another nice diagram on what that can look like. There can be your 10 gig at the spine to support all of your 1 gig. Doesn't have to be 1 gig. It could be 10 gig at the edge as well if you're building an aggregation or a distribution layer. And those were your hops down, which is not uncommon. But as well as that, you can still look at dual ring topology. There is no reason that you can't do that. On any 1 gig switch at NETGEAR in the M4300s, you can have up to 4 ports as stacking ports, which would be your included 2 copper, 2 fiber, 10 gig ports. So they can all be used as stacking at the same time. On a 10 gig switch, you can have up to 16 ports as stacking ports. That's to 16, which is a pretty incredible number, which you can achieve some big bandwidths on. And again, when you move up to the 40 gig ports on the 96X, you can achieve some massive stacking bandwidths between switches. Some of the benefits around that. I'm going to kind of talk just a little around this list. Now, we've kind of seen a lot of what the M4300 can do there. You've got your flexible server connections. I think distributed LACP is probably one of the most useful things in terms of how the stacking works and the ability to lag across switches. Remember, if I had a stack of 8 switches, I could potentially distribute my LACP or my lag across all 8 of those switches. We've got affordable enterprise grade switches. So at a price point and in comparison, the M4300s will come in very favorably, not just in price, but also in feature set. And we are very confident of that. We've got some great solutions where it's already out there working that we'll talk about today. World-class features and future-ready networks. So obviously we've got things like the non-stop forwarding. Every switch within the M4300 range is full layer 3. So they all have the same features. So regardless of which switch it is, you are still going to get the same features. If there is a failure on your master or backup switch in a stack, it will not affect the delivery of traffic in and out of any other switch in that stack. Got things like 40 gig just being introduced. So if you are building networks for the future in SMB, you now have the ability to bring in things like 40 gig, which has kind of been a preserve of the true enterprise. Scales with your business. Remember, if you start at 1 gig now, you are not being penalized for buying a 1 gig model that will only stack and work with a 1 gig model. You can buy a 10 gig model or a 40 gig model, and they will still become one stack for single IP address management, resiliency, and redundancy. So remember, all switches within the M4300 range stack together. True edge to core stacking. So we support stacking on 10 gig copper and 10 gig fiber. So you can have switches up to 10 kilometers apart, and they can still become one virtual switch. So if you did have 8 switches distributed around your site, you can still create one stack of switches to create one switch management for the entirety of your site. The full speed ahead, I think we can guess what that means. We can go all the way from 1 gig, 2.5 gig, 5 gig, 10 gig, and now 40 gig on the switches. 0 downtime with non-stop forwarding, convergent access layer, really kind of a collapsed core distribution and access installation in terms of SMB. I can have my core, maybe something like the 96X. I can have my distribution in 10 gig, and I can also have my 1 gig access all under the same stack of switches, which is pretty cool. Let me tell you best practices we kind of looked at. So again, you can perform and create top of rack switches. They don't have to be top of rack, but in terms of high availability, we have some good and really easy to configure active switch configurations and scenarios, and full power redundancy. So not just on the networking side, any full width model will include the ability to have dual power supplies. They'll always come with one power supply in terms of the POE. You choose whether you want a PA or PB power supplies, which will denote the power. Half-width models only come with one power supply. The redundancy is built into the fact that you are using two half-width models. So let's focus in and take a dive into the 96X. So this is the newest member of the M4300 family. And this is what it looks like. So you either buy it as a starter kit, which you can buy half populated, or you buy it as an empty chassis, and then you can populate it with the PSUs and the module itself. So these are the modules that you can buy. So you have the 10 gig port card, you have the 10 gig port card with a POE daughter card on top, you have the 10 gig SFP plus port card, you have the QSFP plus port card at 40 gig. You also have a couple of different power supplies there. So you have the APS 600W and you have the APS 1200W. So if you are doing things like potentially 96 ports of POE plus, you may want to use the 1200W. Remember, there's 12 slots, which means a maximum of either 96 ports if you're using any one of the 10 gigs. Remember, those are multi-gig as well, so they are 1, 2.5, 5, or 10, and then up to 24 ports for a 40 gig QSFP plus populated switch. And you can mix and match those. It doesn't have to be all of one. You can have any combination. Now, the only thing is, if you are doing, and I just realized I made an error, it is a maximum of 48 ports of PoE. But only the first 6 port modules at the top are used for PoE. So do remember, actually, it is only 48 ports of PoE plus. Everything else at the bottom will not deliver PoE. But if you do want to do some PoE on there, the ability is there. And at a 24 port QSFP plus switch, I am fairly confident at a feature and price point, this switch is incredibly hard to match. So I would encourage you to go out and look at that. If you are thinking about 40 gig, do look at that as a possibility, and I'm sure you will be pleasantly impressed. So this is something that was built for a partner at one of our offices, and this is an actual running solution. And I believe one of the partners who delivered this solution is actually on the line, which would be a ZV solution, I believe. So this is 396Xs in a stack. They have 6 times 40 gig stacking links between every single switch. Remember, that's quoted one way, but in terms of traffic, you are looking at 240 gig bidirectional traffic stacking bandwidth between every single switch. That's in both directions, as it is a 3-switch stack. So we've got 24 4K senders and 24 4K receivers on each switch. That's the ability to have to send between any switch. So if I want to send from one encoder to a decoder on another switch, there is a possibility to be sending 240 gig worth of video streams between those switches at any one time. And that is supported by those 6 40 gig stacking links between those switches. So you can achieve some pretty incredible bandwidth between these switches. Now, if you are looking at the 96X as a solution, you do have this, which is our product configurator. So you just go to netgear.com/96x-config. You can put in how many ports you're looking at: copper, fiber, 10 gig, PoE, 40 gig, power supplies, dual redundancy, do I want a installation contract? And that will then create you a bill of materials that you can give off to your VAR, your e-com, your partner, your distributor, and all the product SKUs that you would need. So if you need something to help make your life easy, encourage you to use that. There are a few other tools available to you that we'll look at. Now, if you are looking at other family members from the M4300s or any other switch in particular from the NETGEAR range, or even any other product from NETGEAR Business, you can go to selector.netgear.com, input your requirements in terms of port speed, form factor, management, stacking, non-stacking, POE, etc. And this will return you all the available product from NETGEAR Business. So it is only for NETGEAR Business. It's available on that web link. It's also available on Android and iOS. There's loads of other resources, things like YouTube channels. All our past and present webinars will be on there. So if you did miss something, maybe something on our Untitled Smart Cloud or multi-gig and our range of multi-gig switches, you can go online. There's also some webinars on our AV solutions. Go online. You can also visit our NETGEAR Business YouTube channel, which has a whole host of videos on setup, installation, and more. So I do encourage you to look up that. We've got some case studies, so if you do come and talk about us with any work or projects you're working on. If you are looking at working with some NETGEAR M4300s, please do come and spark a conversation with us. If there's any potential maybe to do a case study of those projects, we are always looking for more partners to do case studies with and document the great work that they're doing to share with the rest of our partners. Also look at some current ones we've got out there, such as Hawkeye, who is owned by Sony. They do VAR technology. That is all powered on the NETGEAR M4300 range of switches. Also Tynecoast College, which is another large M4300 deployed solution. So if you want to come and read about those, let us know. They are available online. And we'll send out links post this webinar. But again, do come and talk to us about any potential projects you're working on. We'd love to maybe do some case studies with you. The NETGEAR difference. So we're going to kind of leave on this. Remember, all NETGEAR M4300 switches come with lifetime next business day warranty replacement included, free of charge. That's true lifetime. So it's the lifetime that you own the switch, not the lifetime that we make it. Lifetime next business day, as we said, get lifetime technical support, which is 24/7 online chatter support. There is a SKU if you'd like to upgrade to 24/7 telephone support. It's a very nominal cost. And I encourage you, if you do like to talk to somebody on the telephone, do talk to your NETGEAR partner or account manager around that. There's a whole host of other links, so we will send out some links to this webinar with all these things as well, things like RAID calculators, product selectors, the communities. NETGEAR has a great community at community.netgear.com where you can interact not just with NETGEAR, our general manager, John McHugh, pose questions to us about current products, future products, about what products should I use in what place, but you can also talk to other members of the NETGEAR community, which can be incredibly useful. So I'd encourage you to go on that again. So these will all be there for you. And that brings us to our Q&A section. So now's your chance. If you do have questions, I'd encourage you to pop them in there. I'll just open up my chat window and my question window. No questions in there at the moment, so I think we're looking good. Here's a question. What is the standard lead time on NETGEAR products if not in stock? There's a question for someone other than me, if there ever was one. Conrad, so look, we're pretty quick on lead time. Generally, most products you should find in stock, but you will generally be looking at around 7 to 10 days as advised by our fantastic Amy Day, our distribution account manager. But again, do work with your partners and work with NETGEAR. I'd encourage you to speak to your account manager, and we will do all in our power to ensure we can support you in that. And she's also added that everything is in stock. No problem. Thank you for the question, Connor. I hear, we've got another question here. I hear NETGEAR is targeting the AV market. Is this something we could have training on? Yes, this is absolutely true. And yes, you absolutely can have training on this. There's a number of different avenues that you can look at. If you pop over to our SDVOE, well, not ours, there, the SDVOE.org, they have a whole host of online training in terms of what the SDVOE do. They also have a lot of IP training. If you want to look at specific training on potentially NETGEAR and maybe some of our partners, such as ZV and how we use equipment, I would absolutely encourage you to reach out to either myself. My details will be online after this. NETGEAR do a whole load of webinars, training days, open days. As I said earlier, we have an open day on the 13th of March. So that's an open invitation for you guys to come down to the NETGEAR office, meet NETGEAR, meet our partners, all based around the AV solution. It's a very relaxed day. Come and talk to us, come talk to the staff, come and see equipment up and running. So that's very important. We've also got a webinar on the 7th of March on AV. So that's going to be online again, much in the same format as today. So I would encourage you to go and visit and sign up to that and learn about some of that. We also did a webinar with ZV not too long ago, so that is online. You search online for NETGEAR AV webinar on YouTube, that will be online, and that we also had our partner ZV and our good friend Rob Moneyman on there to talk about how NETGEAR and ZV can work and do work together to form a pretty good solution. So, and again, if there's anything else in terms of what you're looking at for training or support, I would absolutely encourage you to either reach out to myself or your NETGEAR account manager. So feel free to phone up NETGEAR UK and talk to us about your requirement, and we will take it from there. Got another question. Who are the major NETGEAR distributors? So within the UK, our distribution partners, our Exertis, Ingram Micro, and Tech Data. Those are ours. But remember, you also have guys like Stampede, who now fall under Exertis, if you are looking at things like AV. You also have Maverick under Tech Data, who are part of Tech Data. So those are our avenues. So I think that looks like all of the questions for today. Is there anything else? You've got a few moments still. And Victor, if you do need any help with any distribution partners, do feel free to reach out to us. Ian, yep, the slide deck will be made available. There'll also be a link to this recorded webinar that will be out on YouTube, and that will be available pretty much immediately today post this webinar. So if you do have any friends that are really upset that they couldn't make it today, tell them not to panic. They can watch this later on YouTube. I'm not on Netflix yet, but we're in discussions. Cool. So look, guys, I think that's going to bring us to a close at a pretty reasonable time today. So thank you for joining us. If you do think of a question that you didn't get to ask, you didn't think of at the time, like I said, don't be afraid to reach out to yourself. I'm going to put my email address in the chat section now. Please feel free to hit me any emails. please don't sign me up to any mailing lists. And so remember, do feel to reach out and pop any questions, even if you just want to drop a message and say hello. It'd be very much appreciated. Thank you for joining us again. Remember, we will be doing some more webinars. We have an open day on Insight on the 21st of February. We have an Insight webinar coming up. We have another AV webinar coming up on the 7th of March, and we have an open day on the 13th of March. So there's loads going on, loads of activities to help support you guys out there. And if there's anything more you need from us, you know where we are. Otherwise, enjoy the rest of your day, and thank you for joining us.